Hello, I want to read for you this article on profound transformation versus shallow change, written by Henri Lipmanowicz, co author of The Surprising Power of Liberating Structures. Now, imagine two Stone Age villages, Linden and Pierce, of similar size and at the same stage of development. Their villagers have only 6 basic tools that they use routinely: big hammerstones, small hammerstones, hand axes, stone flakes, bone awls and needles, and wooden spears. Linden and Pierce do a good job of training all villagers to use these 6 tools effectively. Elders and more adroit villagers regularly share experiences and advise younger ones. Nevertheless, the performance of each tool remains stubbornly dependent on individual talent. Small improvements or modifications to the basic tools rarely emerge, and when they do, they're not easily adopted. For tens of thousands of years, nothing much changes in these two villages until one day, out of the blue, a traveling salesman from a more advanced planet appears, driving an enormous flying truck. It's in the middle of the day, and all villagers are out gathering food or hunting. The village chief and his 7 elders are the only ones there to see the truck approaching. They're in shock and can't believe their eyes, awed by the truck and rather scared of the salesman when he steps out of it. He bows to the chief, and with a great deal of patience and a few presents, he succeeds in making him feel comfortable enough to explain that the purpose of his visit is to offer some new tools to the village. He then fetches from his truck a toolbox and bag of supplies that he empties in front of the wide-eyed chief and village elders. Very slowly, he starts demonstrating how each tool works and can be used. First a hammer, then a hammer and some nails, then a screwdriver and some screws, a pair of pliers, a hand drill, a saw, a clamp, a razor blade, a wire cutter, and finally, a needle and thread. He finishes with a display of all the supplies: ropes, metal wires, tapes, and finally, the glue, which he demonstrates by gluing 2 pieces of wood. The salesman then repeats every tool one by one and invites the chief to try each one by himself and experience personally how to use it. Then it's the elders' turn to do the same. Predictably, the chief and the elders are awestruck. When all the demonstrations are finished and the salesman explains that he has been sent to bring new tools to the village, and he offers to donate however many toolboxes and jars of supplies the chief wants at no cost or obligation, the chief and the elders are predictably dumbfounded, speechless, and at a loss for how to respond to such an amazing offer. They ask the salesman to repeat his offer and to wait as they walk away to discuss what to do. After much debate, they decide that these new and exceptional tools will be quite useful for new and important projects, which they will personally direct. When they return, the chief asks the salesman to give 10 toolboxes and 10 bags of supplies, 3 for the chief and 1 for each elder. As the salesmen unload the boxes and bags, the chief and elders thank him profusely. As he takes off in his amazing truck, they wave excitedly, then promptly carry their precious boxes and bags to their caves for storage until an appropriate project materializes. With his truck still full, the salesman then drives to Linden. Once again, all villagers are out, and only the chief and a few elders are there to welcome the salesman and watch him demonstrate his tools. They love trying out the tools, laugh a lot while doing it, and they too are absolutely awestruck. However, when the salesman offers to donate toolboxes and supplies to his village, a different scenario unfolds. The Linden chief jumps on the offer and doesn't hesitate or debate with the elders and quickly answers, "If it's possible, I'd like 2 boxes for every villager." Well, 2 boxes for every villager, wow! The salesman is totally taken by surprise, then laughs and finally replies, "Well, chief, what are you going to do with all these boxes?" The chief replies, "Well, if the villagers have only 1 box, most of them will use it rarely because they'll be afraid to break the tools. However, if each has 2 boxes, I hope they'll start to use them every day." "Well, Chief, you're incredibly lucky," replied the salesman. "The Pierce Chief only took 10 toolboxes from my truck, and therefore it's still full. I can agree to unload the entire truckload for your village." "Ah, that's great," replied the Linden chief. "Wait until the villagers returned. They'll help you unload each one, and each one will take 2 toolboxes. Then I'd like you to do your demonstrations again in front of all the villagers and show them how to use the tools and new supplies." And so it was. With the help of the amazed villagers, the salesman emptied his truck of all toolboxes and the barrels filled with the basic supplies of nails and screws of various types, jars of glue, bobbins of thread, rolls of rope, rolls of metal wires, and rolls of tapes. Every toolbox contained the same 12 simple tools: one small and one large hammer, screwdriver, pliers, hand drill, knife, needles, razor blades, wire cutter, clamps, one small and one large saw. Every villager received 2 boxes, and the chief claimed all the extra ones as a reserve. The salesman demonstrated once more how to use each tool, and all villagers got to practice a few times to get the feel of every tool and supply. Lots of exclamations, lots of clapping, lots of laughter followed every demonstration and trial. Many questions were asked, and all were answered. The villagers couldn't believe their eyes and couldn't resist talking about what they might do with their new tools. Every tool was simple enough for villagers to imagine using them, and the chief encouraged those discussions. When all demonstrations were finished, the salesman was exhausted, but happy and excited. He bowed. All the villagers clapped. He bowed again. There was more clapping. He bowed again and then waved goodbye to go back into his truck. The chief and all the villagers started jumping up and down and cheering very loudly. The pandemonium brought a huge smile on his face, and the salesman drove off into the sunset. From that point in time, life in Pyrrhus and Linden evolved quite differently. In Pyrrhus, the toolboxes and supplies stored in a cave wound up being used infrequently, and only for projects that benefited the chief or occasionally some elders. For each project, a few villagers were instructed and directed by the chief how to use some of the special tools, and as soon as the project was finished, the tools were stored back in the cave. For all routine or daily work, Pyrrhus villagers, including the chief and the elders, continued to use the same 6 basic tools, making small improvements in them and their use as time went by. The new tools helped Pyrrhus change, but only a little and very slowly. It took 3 million years for Pyrrhus to evolve to the Bronze Age. In Linden, the chief and a few elders and a handful of villagers didn't wait for any special reason and started using their new tools immediately, a little at first and gradually more over time as they became more adept and confident. Villagers, with a few exceptions, energized by the example of their chief and elders, started trying one tool at a time, beginning, of course, with the hammer. They quickly discovered that the new tools made most daily tasks easier, faster, and more productive. The chief, however, noticed that he kept having a hard time getting rid of his old habit, his automatic reflex of grabbing one of his familiar old tools for routine tasks. His solution was to collect all 6 of them, carry them to the most senior elder, and give him the following instructions. "If I come and ask you for one of my old tools, you must not give it to me immediately. First, you'll ask me, 'What is your purpose?' And then you'll ask me, 'Why is that important?' And then you'll ask me, 'Well, why is it important for you to use an old tool instead of a new one?' You'll give me my old tool only if I can convince you that it's the best choice." As they became more confident, some villagers started experimenting, doing tasks or building objects that would have been impossible with their traditional tools. The village was small, and news of the progress made with the new tools traveled fast, but the chief noticed that the old habits didn't die easily, and only some of the villagers made full use of their new tools. All other villagers continued to do their daily tasks the same way, using the same old tools. He considered for a while confiscating all the traditional tools from the villagers, but changed his mind. He sensed that brute force wouldn't be well received and would draw a lot of resistance. He needed something instead that would make it easy for all villagers to deal with their personal habits, traditions, or insecurities at their own personal speed. So he decided to gather the whole village every 10 days for a few hours and invite villagers to share stories, good or bad, of their experiences with the new tools. He encouraged all villagers to observe one another and learn from each other, or to ask and get help. The gatherings were a new thing, and the villagers had to invent a new name for them. They held a contest. Every villager participated, and the winning new word was Joy Shop. Joy Shop after Joy Shop, confidence grew for all villagers. Gradually, all used their new tools more and more, but without abandoning their traditional ones completely. They discovered that they could do not only more alone by themselves, but even more so together and with some other villagers. Teamwork developed and innovation started to flourish. Life became more interesting, more surprising, and more exciting. More became possible, which invited more to become possible. The wider range of tools created more and more opportunities for villagers to cooperate and to learn how to work together. Maybe, let's try, and why not entered the daily vocabulary. Frequent progress brought joy and satisfaction. The new tools improved not only how villagers did their work, but also how they related to each other. More interactions, more trust, more exchanges of help, more sharing, and more communication. Linden had not just changed, it had transformed. Linden zipped to the Bronze Age, 2 million years ahead of Pyrrhus. The villages of modern days are the offices where a growing portion of modern work requires groups and organizations of all sorts to work together, to collaborate regularly with their group and often across groups or functions, or beyond their organization. While not manual, this work also requires tools of a different kind, but tools nonetheless. These tools are the methods or techniques that people use to organize how they work together when they meet, either in person, virtually, or a combination. They're the methods groups use for making progress, solving problems, for innovating, for reaching decisions, for adapting to change. Because these work organizing methods determine who gets included, who gets heard, and who doesn't, who participates and who contributes, they have a critical impact on the quality of outcomes and effectiveness of their implementation. Indirectly and invisibly, they either drive or limit performance and the speed of progress. What can be learned from our two Stone Age villages? To start answering this question, check every working group in your network. How many tools or methods is each group using routinely or daily when meeting and working together? Make a list of methods for each group. Next, identify which groups or organizations, like a Stone Age village, using only a handful of traditional methods routinely. Are most of these methods ancient? Is the group using the same handful of meetings after meeting, regardless of agenda? How much meeting space is taken by the 5 Stone Age methods? Presentation or lecture or speech? Managed or open discussions? Status reports and brainstorming. These 5s are so basic that they must have already been used during the Stone Age meetings. How aware is each group of the inadequacies, such as inclusive or target specific, of each of the old 5? Then, you can be the salesman from a more advanced planet and deliver a more effective set of simple tools and methods, or find someone who can. Liberating structures are one very effective set. 3 dozen methods, all easy to learn and use. Each LS is designed for achieving a specific objective, and all LS are structured to make it easy to include everyone who can contribute. LS are widely used across the world, and there should be no need to search for help from another planet. There's a free app which can be downloaded on the Apple App Store or Google Play. It provides easy-to-follow step-by-step description of every LS in 9 languages. Many more useful ideas and information are provided in the book, The Surprising Power of Liberating Structures. Simple rules to unleash a culture of innovation. Second lesson from the Stone Age. Do not, as in Pyrrhus, introduce LS solely to the top management team. Now, as then, the new methods will only have a significant impact if they are used widely and routinely by many people at all levels. This is possible with LS because the objectives for which they are designed are encountered daily by everybody. Hence, LS can be used by everybody every day. As close to the whole village as possible should be offered the benefit of demonstration and practice sessions of how to use a set of liberating structures. Workshops, joy shops, are easy to arrange for groups of any size up to 200. Which LS to include in the workshop is best decided with a small team of villagers who are familiar with its challenges. Introduce first the set of LS that the villagers are likely to use regularly. Just as the Linden chief understood and accepted that all villagers would not start using their new tools at the same time, be prepared. A few early adopters will jump on the LS, but many others will need multiple opportunities with each LS to build confidence. Each person will need varying amounts of time for changing his or her long-standing habits of always using the same traditional tools, and everyone else's long-standing habit of using the same old methods. As it was in the Stone Age, so it is today when it comes to change. The challenge is not with the tools or methods, it is with the people, with their difficulty of changing habits, with the fear of failure, with the what will I do if it doesn't work. The Linden chief dealt effectively by changing his own challenging and changing his habits. He dealt patiently with the people challenge by giving his villagers regular opportunities to gather, share stories of their experience, help one another, form teams to invent and build new applications, etc. For each group that you work with, your challenge will be to help design a program, a series of events, that the group will implement to get all its members comfortable with the routine use of liberating structures. Given the human unpredictabilities, it will have to be adjusted step by step, informed by progress and failures. Linden's chief had one great advantage. He knew everyone in the village and walked around every day observing how each villager was using the new tools. He would then help or advise or ask some other villager for assistance and learn new tricks to practice and pass along. Nothing can replace direct observation. So, you too, like the chief, must find ways to observe what is being done by members of your groups. Since you will not have the same luxury of walking around on a daily basis, you'll have to organize for this observing and counseling to be done internally by various participants. Do all you can to inspire your groups to make observing and feedback a routine practice. It is key to progress and success. The chief never argued with reluctant villagers or forced any of them to use a particular tool. He spent most of his time with his happy users, developing new ideas or gathering them to practice and brainstorm. He chose to wait for the many demonstrations and stories of the periodic joy shops to work their magic on even the most hesitant villagers. You too should focus on supporting those who are eager, interested, excited, and then giving them and others as many opportunities as possible to be exposed to what they do and the results they are getting. Forcing people to use LS is a waste of time. Like the Linden chief, you will discover that many people have a hard time stopping their reflex habit of using traditional tools that they have been using for years in order to make space for new tools. He invented games and contests for villagers to put away one traditional tool for 1 day, then 2 days, then 1 week, and come up with alternative solutions using the new tools. Villagers shared stories of their workaround, laughed a lot at their adventures, and discovered painlessly how they could let go. Yet the obvious but hard lesson is that one must stop doing one thing to make space for doing a different one. For instance, stop presentations in meetings by sending them in advance in video form, for example, to make space for questions and comments or debate, or who knows. As he watched, the Linden chief discovered that the villagers' main challenge wasn't how to use each tool separately. It was how to plan which step-by-step sequence of tools he or she had to use for a particular project. Like the Linden chief, you will discover that many people struggle initially with planning and choosing which LS to use for achieving their meeting objective. Many are used to agendas consisting of a list of topics without any description of how to treat each topic. They're probably used to meetings with always the same design regardless of the topic. For instance, a presentation followed by a discussion, and maybe also always the same participants. The effort involved in the design planning process, or the time it takes, or the difficulties experienced can be the true obstacles to using LS for many, as you will be asking, who should be included? Practicing as a group is the more effective approach. In conclusion, 5 meeting or work methods, old, generic, not particularly effective, inclusive, not target specific, does look like being in the Stone Age of modern work, and explains in great part why complaints about meetings never end at all levels. Liberating structures are a modern set of 36 simple methods that can transform how work gets done. Better results, more fun, and true effective inclusion. Collusion. Freudian slip, who knows? Enjoy the journey. Henri Lipmanowicz, co-author of The Surprising Power of Liberating Structures. Simple Rules to Unleash a Culture of Innovation. My name's Jeremy Nathaniel Akers, and this has been Profound Transformation versus Shallow Change. Hope to see you out there on the Liberating Structures learning journey.